My name is Matthew Heil. I'm here with my coach, Steve Trimper, and this is my project for interpersonal communications. And we're going to be discussing culture within our program and how it breeds success and how communication is very important. So, welcome on. The first question I have for you, coach, is what is culture in our program? Like, what is it? What are our values that we have here?
Yeah, well, obviously, culture is a big topic. And before you even start talking about having a quality culture in a business, an organization, a school, a team, you have to really understand that the people that you invite into the organization need to have a good set of values. And one of the things I always talk about, Matt, is a lot of businesses and these organizations they overindulge in those. They have so many values that you can't really adhere to them. You know, if I was to tell you to be great at 35 things, it's hard to be great at 35 things, but you'd rather stand out and be elite at one or two things. So here at Stetson, we follow a few core values. One of them is, acting with character at all times. So we define what character means to us and doing the right thing and representing the university well. We use the word commitment. Well, when you're committed to something, that means that you have to really put your blood, sweat, your tears, all of your energy into that task that you're going to do and stay committed to it. We use the word excellence a lot. And with excellence, can we evaluate at the end of the day that we did everything we can to be excellent that day, or even sometimes just the practice, or even your class that you're in? Did you do everything with this interview and everything you set up and all the prep work that I just watched you do? You were trying to be as excellent as you can as you go forward. The last two, one of them is operating with integrity. We try to, show up every single day and not only do the right thing and act with the character we talked about, but are we doing the work at 110%? Are we skipping and cutting corners and cheating at times? And that's not something that we want is when we're using the word integrity. And the last one is kind of a spin on being tough or being gritty. We use the word blue collar, kind of like the lunch pail mentality that you show up to work and you grind it out and you put in those 12-hour days. So that's just the hard work is what that signifies. And ironically, Matt, those values came from one of my first teams here when I first took the job in 2017. I asked them to develop a list of values that our program could have for the future. And that's the ones that we refined our list of probably 30 we started with down to those things. Why they're so important is that those values allow us to hold ourselves accountable if we're not doing those things. And secondly, in times of adversity and failure, that's when we can go back to those values and try to operate underneath those to get us back on track. I mean, it's always easy when you're getting hundreds on tests or you're hitting 400 at the plate or you're winning everything. It's in times of failure and times of adversity can you actually operate with those values. So once you get that good set of values going and you kind of pay attention to them, what you do is you're basically building leaders. Okay, leaders and leadership comes from acting accordingly well and to the set of values. And then once our program has the majority of the guys that we feel are good leaders, they're going to do the right thing. They're not really concerned about peer pressure. They're going to, act with those values. Those leaders now help us build a good culture. We can't have a good culture if we don't have good leaders. We don't have good leaders unless we have a set of values. So there's a step process to go to building a good culture.
Yeah, and another thing too, like with all that, is the leaders that we've had and that I've seen since I've been here since last year when we had a lot of success. We're very good with communication, off the field, on the field, in the locker room. And another thing too that they were very good at was nonverbal cues, which is kind of like not showing body language, things like that, making sure that we didn't do that. And it didn't have to come from the coaches. And when it did, it was just a slip up here and there. But touching on that, like we talk a lot, we have a lot of things that we talk about nonverbal cues. Like, can you explain some of those?
Yeah, I think the two things we talk, what you just mentioned is communication and image is what sticks in my mind. So the body language, the reactions, it's so easy to be a negative Nelly and point the fingers and put your hands up in the air and blame somebody. And that just shows a sign of negativity. It shows a sign of weakness. In competing and competition all the time. And you're going to compete in this classroom. You're going to compete on the baseball field. You're going to compete when you guys get into the boardroom and interview. those are all negative comments or negative movements that kind of can chink your armor a little bit. And so when you talk about like those nonverbal cues, it's just acting stoic. It's acting like you've been there before. It's acting with being in control of your mind. You've heard this before from me. If you want to play in the big time or if you want to operate in the big time, you got to control your mind. Well, if you're out of control of your mind, how are you going to perform on, a regional, or how are you going to go into an interview with 100 people that are all got the same resume in you? How are you going to stand out? So that image is very important, of those nonverbal cues that you have of looking the part, walking the walk, talking the talk, have that look in your eye, as you go forward. We all know, I call it the it factor. When I see somebody that's calm, cool, collective, they have that it factor as we go. Touching on communication, it's the number one thing. I mean, we communicate so much today with technology through a text or, through an email. We don't have as many verbal cues. And the verbal cues are just as important as the nonverbal cues, where my emotion comes out in our conversation. Us doing this interview by text is certainly not going to be the same as on this camera and talking with a mic, because you're getting my emotion, you're getting my, my passion for this topic. So the communication is very important. And one of the key parts of communication is good leaders know how to communicate by asking questions. So everybody likes to talk about themselves, but when I take this whole interview and be like, hey, Matt, that's great that you asked me about communication, but let me hear about how you do it so well. Let me hear how you shut down South Florida last year when you got that start and you went 6 deep on those guys. You automatically perk up and you're like, okay, I want to talk about myself. So a good leader understands about letting people tell their story and share their story and communicating. And to finalize this, communication is always about good communicators are trying to get to an end. They're trying to get a deal closed, or a recruit to sign with a program, an acquisition done, right? So I've always said that communication has 3 C's, the 3 C's of communication. The first one is connecting to people. So I got to recruit you. I think you're a good left-handed pitcher. You're going to win for us. So I connected with you by watching you play. If I'm going after a donor, I need to connect to people that have the capacity to give to our stadium project. So I do my research and I connect on, are you a good player? Are you a good donor? Are you a good person to be in our program? Once that happens, the most pivotal point of communication happens. It's the conversing. So it's up to me to reach out to you by text or build that relationship so you start to feel really appreciated. You feel loyal to the program. You feel trusting of the program. So that relationship and that part of communication of conversing, the second C, is so important. I need to try to go up to your summer leagues and see in the summertime. That's a conversation piece all the time. Once that happens, like I said, the loyalty, the trust, the respect happens. So the third part of the C of communication is the close. Mm-hmm. Hey, coach, I want to come to Stetson. Great. You closed the deal for me. I didn't beg you to come here. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'd like to help you with your stadium project. Tell me how I can help out with a financial contribution. Hey, they closed it for me. So connecting, conversing, and closing, if you're really good at this, you do the first 2, and the person that you're with is doing the last part of the C of communication, which is closing the deal.
That's awesome. And then the last thing I want to touch on with you here is you've been coaching college baseball for 30 plus years now at a few different schools. And what's the main thing you've seen from a lot of these teams that have been successful in their cultures? Because you have the 5 values you discussed here. At other schools, you had a lot of success too, and it's flipped around programs, made places better that are still better today. So what was a big thing for you there?
Yeah, I mean, not to go through my resume, but like I took over. I was the youngest Division I coach in the country when I took the Manhattan job, and so we didn't have anything. I didn't have assistant coaches, scholarships. We didn't even have a home field. My job has always been, if I'm going to leave a place, leave it better than I found it. Okay. And so we took a program that was next to last in Division I, 290 teams, and we took them to a regional. At Maine, we had to fight the weather and budgets and travel and not playing home games. And so, again, we took them to a couple of regionals. And obviously here at Stetson, you have a lot of great resources, and it's a place that really cares about their school, the academics here, the athletic programs, and the baseball program. And we were able to have success. I will tell you one common factor. Every team that has gone on to get a ring or win a championship was not my most talented teams. It's hands down. I've had about 9 or 10 of them in my 30-year career. They've not been the most talented teams. However, it's been the most teams that have gotten people drafted, and we've won the most. But those teams had an unbelievable ability to adhere to our values and to really focus on the culture. And I want to tell you one thing about culture: it changes all the time. It changes weekly. We get a coach leaving, we get a player leaving, we get weather, we get players hurt. There's so many factors that go into what could change your culture that you have to pay attention to it weekly, because just when you think you got it figured out, all of a sudden, and again, no offense, you're one of my players, but I'm surrounded by 18 to 22-year-olds. So you guys are going to make mistakes. You're going to go up and down. You're going to do dumb things. You're going to do smart things. Like, that all affects our culture as we go. And my job is not to teach you how to throw harder or to hit. It's to make sure you understand we got to adhere to our culture. We have to understand mistakes happen, and they're great building blocks through failure for us to give future success. And so those teams I had, to answer your question in the long way, is they're not the most talented, skilled teams that won. They were the ones that they knew how, when the going got tough, when the fire was on, when the pressure was on, they knew how to succeed, and they understood pressure, versus preparation. You're doing this interview for your exam and for a test. Well, you prepared for it. You asked me to do this a couple days ago. We talked about it. You had set questions. You had, Foster come in and bring his equipment. So, there was a preparation going on. Your hopes of getting a good grade. So you prepared. If you would have thrown this thing on a cell phone and we were talking and there was no questions, you would have failed from this project because you weren't prepared. So I think that, all of those teams understood about preparing all the time for, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it's also working on your weaknesses. If you're not a good public speaker, go publicly speak. Take on a fear, take on a challenge, because they become a strength real quick when you invest in those things. So, a lot to unpack in 5 minutes of interviews for your project, but I'm happy to share some of the things on what we do here at Stetson and what we hope to do to continue to build not only a good culture for 2025, but the guys on this team that you're currently a part of, they're also going to be successful for our future teams. Like, what the groundwork is here is they're holding the bar so our other teams kind of live up to that standard also.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Coach. It was good having you on.
Yep, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we're back here with player Isaiah Barquette, one of our team captains. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking here about identity and the success that comes with it of the team. And he's been a big role in that. Transferred in from NC State last year, had a huge impact on our team that went to a regional and won the ASUN. So it'll be good hearing what he has to say. But my first question to him is, how do you create an identity within the team being a captain?
I think it's difficult, but it's also easy in a way. It all depends on the locker room. You mentioned me coming here last year. It was super awesome to be welcomed in with open arms and all the older guys, Jongo, Perrette, Durgan, etc. And then this year, with how many new guys we have, it's a lot harder, just because everyone's got their own identity, like you said, and everyone wants to kind of feel their way out, what's their role, etc. But it's just all about being yourself, I think, and, people gravitate towards successful people that work hard, people that love on each other. So I think just spreading love and, working your butt off in anything you do and, just trying to be the best teammate no matter what happens.
Yeah, and then the following up with that, we talk a lot in class about achievement culture, which is when pretty much everyone from the culture is like buying into something. So I think that's big in our program here, instead of more of an individualistic culture where one guy wants something more than another. I think that what you've been able to create within this team is a very achievable thing. Like, we want to go play in another regional. We want to get past that and go to Omaha at some point, past the super regional. How do you think we can continue building that culture?
I think it's all about togetherness. I think it's just the little things, working out together, hitting with different guys instead of the same guys, right? Like, even tonight, possibly going to play basketball together, competing with each other, just laughing with each other, just spending time together. Like, when we get back this spring, we're going to do more things. We're going to have team dinners. We're going to all hang out at guys' houses, watch football, watch the Super Bowl, etc. So just that camaraderie is how you build team culture and how you build love, when guys are laughing and everyone's in a happy mood is tend when you get the best out of people.
Yeah, and a lot of people too see you off the field and they communicate with you there and they talk to you. They see you out somewhere, out at a restaurant. And they're like, "Hey, how are you?" And you're a very good communicating guy, but when you get on the field, it's a different type of communication than most people would think, and you take on a different role. Can you just talk a little bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, on the field communication for me is one of my biggest attributes is making sure everyone on the field knows exactly what they're doing, at all times, whether that's you on the mound or, Saba behind the plate or other guys in the field. It's important for everyone to know before the pitch is thrown that, hey, I got to be here, I got to be there. And I think that's all comes from preparation. If you're not prepared before a play happens or in practice, you're not going to be prepared, in the ninth inning when we have to get the last out to beat Alabama to move on to the next game. So I think, just making sure all the guys are on the same page is super important because when people aren't on the same page, you're not going to have success. And when everyone's rolling together, going in a straight line, towards your goal, you're going to have success.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. See you.